Kia ora koutou katoa, no mai, haere mai. Welcome to another Tauiwi Caucus webinar. On this Friday morning, we will get started with a karakia as you're slowly trickling in and then hand over to our wonderful guests today. So, whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora. So today we've got another great webinar planned with the team from Shama who have been involved with the Let's Talk video series. And before we hand over to them, we'll just do our usual ground rules in this virtual space. If anyone does need support and is, you know, we know that we talk a lot about sexual violence in our work, but that's not the case for everyone. So if anyone does need any support after this webinar or during, I'm just going to pop into the chat some links. In a webinar, you don't normally get to be able to speak. So if you do want our attention, there's the chat and the Q&A box, which is the main ways you can interact with us. And I know the panelists would love to hear, in particular, your views, your ideas, and lots of questions and answers. There is the raise hand function, but we don't really use that. So we will just put your hand down if you do raise your hand. And a quirk of the chat is that if you do type in the chat and you only say all panelists, that only goes to these wonderful people that you see on the screen. If you want to talk to everyone, make sure you put to all panelists and attendees, and that way you can interact with everyone online. I think that's all from me, and I haven't forgotten anything. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Arezou, to take away today's session. Kia ora and welcome to all of you.
Thank you, Miriam. Kia ora, everyone. That's wonderful to be here today with all of you. My name is Arezou Zalipour, and I had the privilege to be with this wonderful group of women on the board of trustees of Shama Ethnic Women's Trust for several years. I also work at Auckland University of Technology in the area of film and practice, focusing on the crucial power of video and film to create social change and community change. We are going to, each of us, we're going to introduce ourselves, and then we again come back to the first person, and we start talking about what we think about this project, how we have contributed to it. And after that, as Miriam said, it would be wonderful to see what the audience think and what questions would have. Yes, that's Koro now is going to introduce herself.
Hi, konnichiwa. Hello, tenakoto katoa. My name is Kaoru Tsukigi from Japan. I came to New Zealand in 1998 with a desire to broaden my personal and professional horizon. My background comes from 14 years of being a registered nurse, and I worked in a psychiatric hospital for several years. This gave me the intense interest in working with and understanding issues of personal and social well-being and marginalization. I graduated the counseling degree in 2012. Then 3 ethnic counselors and I established a non-profit organization called Diversity Counseling New Zealand. It's based on Hamilton. I worked as a volunteer to start and has continued working and helping in the community with migrants and former refugees. Currently, I'm working as a registered counselor and operational coordinator at Diversity Counseling New Zealand. Thank you. Hand over to the Anju to introduce.
Hi, good morning. Namaste. My name is Arjun. I'm currently a student and I'm also working for a dance academy here in Auckland as the digital marketing manager. I was working in India for about 4 years in marketing role. And recently, just 1 week before the lockdown, I moved to New Zealand. I got in touch with Shama and this project and got to know about the great and lovely mission that they are working for through my good friend, Samar, who's also part of this panel discussion. Looking forward to have a good time here. Thank you. Samar, would you like to introduce yourselves to others?
Arjun. Kia ora, tenakoto katoa. I'm Samar Kulkarni. I am a lawyer I have been practicing in the areas of human rights and as many areas of um, working with many individuals over 6 years in my life here. Um, I've been in New Zealand for only 2 years, and it's been beautiful because over the last year, Shama and I connected over a small hui at the Beehive, and from there on, we've just been working towards many things. And Let's Talk is something new that's come up. Um, I currently work with the New Zealand Transport Agency, and I'm an Indian by my ethnicity. Namaskaram. I hand it over back to Arezou.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Samar. Yes, so you could see that there are four of us, and we're gonna share with you different perspectives about our involvement and what we think about the Let's Talk project and why is it important. Before we start, I would like everyone to know that our wonderful team member Bex is going to respond to any questions or concern if you have in the chat area. So Bex is going to look after you, and we'll also share the videos as we go with you. So you can see the videos that were made by Samar, Arjun, and Koro. I just, for the beginning, I just want to give you a background of about the project and how the project came into existence. And also I'm here today to represent Shama and other people involved in this exciting project Let's Talk, which is a series of very short video messages that aim to contribute to enhancing awareness about sexual violence prevention among ethnic communities in New Zealand. I'd like to start with a very big thank you to Rebecca Fraser Bex and Neve Sonok, who has worked as a research assistant for us on this project, and the wonderful previous director of Shama, Silvana, and the current one, Maki, and all wonderful Shama staff and the board of trustees and people like Faria, Junita, and Jenny, who has been really working hard for this sexual violence project. This is my privilege to be also representing the people who are not here, and I hope that we all together, the four of us, we can share with you the essence of this project. And I also like to thank the National Networking Ending Sexual Violence Together, TONUS, Miriam, for hosting this webinar. I thought we could start with talking about how this project came into existence and the reasons behind the project. The reasons behind the project would take us back to Shama's vision and mission in providing culturally appropriate support, advocacy, and programs to ethnic women, their families, and their children. So Let's Talk project emerged from the Connection Hui, which was a Hui that happened in 2019 in the beautiful Parliament in Wellington. We all came together and discussed matters that are related to sexual violence among ethnic communities in New Zealand. Approximately 100 ethnic community organizers came together, therapists, they met and discussed preventing and responding to sexual violence in ethnic communities at the Connection Hui in 2019. And the result of this meeting were disseminated through 4 discussion papers, which are available on Shama's website. They are fabulous readings and they provide a lot of information. Shama's engagement with sexual violence, interventions and preventions in ethnic communities in the Waikato region is not something new and was not something new at the time, but becoming part of and actually initiating this fabulous project and intervention was a great achievement for for Shama and also all other ethnic communities across New Zealand at the national level. So at the Connection, communities came together and shared ideas, thoughts, approaches, concerns, and we learned from each other and left the Parliament with more awareness and also more determination around that we want to make change around the matters related to sexual violence. When it comes to sexual violence, I'm in no position to talk about it. I'm no expert in sexual violence, but I'm very proud of Shama becoming the anchor of bringing various ethnic bodies, communities, and conversations together. So one of the key strands of this work in Connection Hui in 2019 was about sexual violence prevention. And participants highlighted the need to be able to start conversations about sexual violence within their own communities. And there were gaps. Everybody got to talk and shared information and realized that there were gaps in terms of having accurate information about the law, for instance, accurate information about what to do if someone has experienced harm, and also not knowing how to start these conversations and hold them safely. So one of the responses to the Connection Hui in 2019 was the project Let's Talk. That is the focus of this webinar today. So Let's Talk is a series of 5 messages about preventing and responding to sexual violence experienced by ethnic communities in New Zealand. The messages were crafted by ethnic practitioners working in sexual violence treatment and prevention, and also been translated into first language by the community champions like by Arjun, Samar, and Koro, and so many other wonderful community champion volunteers who got involved in making these videos and translating the messages. The original messages were developed in collaboration with Shama Sexual Violence Response Team and Connection Hui Advisory Group, and also with a specialist support from Sandra Dixon, the prevention expert. So when Rebecca came to me, Bix, who is looking after you in the chat area as well, she came to me and said, oh, we have these important messages about sexual violence and prevention, and we were thinking about how we could communicate this with the ethnic communities by ethnic communities in New Zealand. And that was just the beginning of the lockdown. And we thought, oh, we could put these messages, we could communicate them, because these messages are actually sensitive messages. They are difficult messages. They are messages that can needs a lot of attention. So we could communicate them, for instance, through leaflets, through flyers, or the content of a website, or some written materials. But we thought, why not we bring the power of video into making these messages communicated by ethnic people among their own communities. So the video came to this story, and that was the beginning of lockdown. We could have made, for instance, very short, nice documentaries that actually show people in action or perform. But we thought, okay, what to do? People are inside their houses, and there is a level of worry going on among everybody. And we also have these difficult messages and sensitive messages that we really want to put across. Then I said, why not? We do one phone, one person, one message, one language. So the idea came to existence by talking about who could get involved. We developed a simple guideline about how to record, for instance, on your phone, a short message, a few tips about lighting, about background, about sound. And I also invited wonderful Niv Swanak, who is not here today with us. She worked as a research assistant on one of my research projects, which is about making a documentary about Shama, which is hopefully going to finish by end of this year, and we might be able to share it with you later at some point through another webinar. And she is such a wonderful communicator, so she got on board, and Bex and myself, and we put these videos together. And but the main role was played by wonderful community champions that some of us we have with us today. The way that they communicated and the way that they showed interest and the way that they got engaged was just fabulous. So when the message went out that who wants to make videos and get involved, we had so many responses. At the moment, we have about 25 people who have either made or are in the process of making videos about this for their own communities. We anticipate that the project will start to grow as it gets more advertised and get more people comfortable hearing and saying these messages. These 5 messages, the title of this, I can read the title of them and you can see them as well. They are powerful messages that have been crafted carefully. One is to prevent someone from causing sexual harm, and the message comes afterward, the title of the message. Another one is that what sexual harm is, or we have how to help if someone has been hurt sexually. what child sexual abuse is, and also what happens if a child tells you about abuse. So even the titles are very, very difficult and sensitive, and these are not things that people could get to talk about very easily or in normal conversations. The power of video, and especially when they get translated by our wonderful community champions and in their own first language, create a very different type of tone to these videos. At one level, when we see the audience, as audience, we see someone speaking in our own language, the language that we were born with. The way that the brain connects to that language is much more powerful. And we also see a person who is talking to us about something that we may not have experienced, we might have heard of, or what we have heard in somebody else's life, and we naturally get more connected and try to do something. That's one thing. And another important thing is that these people who appeared as a face of Let's Talk project, these our wonderful community champions, when I myself, when I looked at the video which was made that shows the message being spoken in Persian language, and that's the language I was born with, the way that the effect that was made in me was just unbelievable. The way it sat so deep in my heart. And that was something that we wanted to happen. And how far that has happened, we hope that that's a good start for us, and we'll see how it goes. The ingredients of the first language that lend the message as video has created an aura of authenticity and vibrancy, and we hope that it has given some sort of personalization as well, and also community spirit that I hope would create the comfortable feeling among people to be able to start conversations about sexual violence. What I love about these videos is that they say the same message in different languages by different people, creating that sense of unity within differences. So these messages, we're trying to say the sexual violence is a matter not associated with culture, not associated with religion, but is a matter of human right, is a matter that should be dealt with at the level of human right. And what we can, as Shama and other ethnic communities, therapists, counselors, and others that are trying to do is that we can create culturally appropriate ways of dealing sexual violence, but the message is the same across all the cultures and across all the religions and across all the ethnic communities. But let's get together and create ways that are culturally appropriate for different peoples and different communities. I hope I'm not talking too much. That was just an introduction to the whole project, and what is going to make this webinar wonderful is hearing from our community champions that they're going to discuss what they felt, what they did, and how they contributed to this. But before going to listen to them, we are going to watch to look at Koru's video, and then she will then talk about her contribution and her thoughts, and then we just go like that. After that, Arjun, and after that, Samar, and then after that, we will be waiting to see what our audience think and what questions would come up. Okay, a thank from me, and then now we're going to listen and watch Koru's video.
性犯罪、性暴力被害を防ぐために、性犯罪、性暴力は被害を受けた人、その家族、そしてその地域社会に長年にわたり暗い影響を与える可能性があります。私たちの住むニュージーランドのコミュニティの未来のために、性犯罪、性暴力を起こす人々を止めたいと思っています。この問題は決して結婚している、付き合い始めたばかりなどは関係なく、性行為をする際に相手の心や体を傷つけていないかどうか必ず確認することが大切です。相手も行為を望んでいるのか楽しんでいるのかどうか確認してみてもいいですし、相手の言葉に注意深く耳を傾けてボディーランゲージを観察することも大切です。もし相手が行為を受け入れているかどうか不確かな時は 行為をやめましょう。時には文化や宗教を口実にして行為を無理強いする人もいますが、これは言い訳にはなりません。嫌がっている相手と行為をするのはニュージーランドでは違法です。また雇用主や宗教者、教育指導者などの優位な立場を利用して相手に性行為をさせるのも違法です。もし私たちのコミュニティでこのような性的被害を受けている、または受け入れざるを得ない状況にいる方をご存知であればご連絡ください。私たちはあなたたちのためにいます。一人で悩まず、どんな些細なことでもご相談ください。こんにちは。はじめまして。私の名前は月木かおると言います。どうぞよろしくお願いします。てなことかとは。Hello, my name is Kaoru Tsukigi from Japan. It is a great pleasure to be a part of Shama's Let's project and to be here this morning. Greeting in my own language, Japanese, is important to me. Please use the chat to say hello in the language your heart connects with. Thank you. Firstly, I will be talking about my migrant experience in New Zealand, and then I will talk about my practice in general working as a counselor. Then at the last, why Japanese language is so important to me. My migrant experiences while I was traveling as a backpacker around New Zealand. I heard a story about a woman traveler who was staying with New Zealand family. She thought the family was really nice and friendly, hugging and kissing her cheeks. These behaviors are quite different than Japanese culture, but she thought this is New Zealand culture, so she was trying to adapt New Zealand culture. However, the father's behavior was getting escalated. He often gave her hugs and kisses. She was getting uncomfortable, but again, she thought this is New Zealand culture. He often spent time at the caravan at the backyard. She visited several times with their kids, and one day he invited her for a cup of coffee. He was drinking at the time. He talking to her nicely, but he starts touching her bodies and kissed her. She couldn't understand what was happening to her, and then she was sexually abused. The sexual abuse had started after the event. She didn't know what to do, nowhere to go. It was far away from town. She left New Zealand earlier than her original plan. She didn't report to the police. The woman thought grooming behaviors are part of New Zealand culture. She wanted to fit with New Zealand culture. She was excited to experience a new culture. Like me when I came to New Zealand. People who are in new country who don't understand social rules in the same way as New Zealanders. So they are way vulnerable to predators grooming. In my video, I explained in Japanese that sometimes people will try to use culture or religious as an excuse. There is no excuse. It is illegal for anyone to have sex with someone who does not want to in New Zealand. It is also illegal to use a position of power to make someone have sex with you. Predators target vulnerable people. If she saw the video, we may prevent the event which had happened to her life. My experience as a migrant in New Zealand. First time I arrived in New Zealand, I was full of excitement, but I was nervous and scared. I had a mixed feelings. Everywhere I went, I see and heard mostly English, of course. In New Zealand, I am. It was totally different than my my country environment. So when I heard or saw Japanese language in New Zealand, it made me feel comfortable and safe because my language is my culture. Why I became a counselor, my migrant experience gave me first-hand knowledge of adapting to life in another country. It was hard and, well, still difficult. My migrant experience motivated me to obtain my degree in counseling to provide counseling in my own language. With seeing the needs for support, having the passion and the experience of being a migrant, I became one of the 4 co-founders starting Diversity Counseling New Zealand, where we provide culturally responsive counseling for ethnic people. I am passionate about providing first language solution for community in Aotearoa, New Zealand. My practice in general, people who have experienced family violence, some of them had sexual violence. Also, people who have experienced sexual abuse, sexual harassment from their boss or senior colleague at their workplace. Vulnerable people who may don't know what their rights are. They usually don't disclose their sexual violence events until they feel safe and connect with. They are afraid of splitting their stories in their own community. Building trust relationship is one of the keys to start opening themselves. Disclose slowly their sexual violence. Also, the counselor speaks the same language as the client speaks, and who understand the client culture is very important for them. The language is powerful and makes immediate connection. I have been witnessing and experiencing this in my practice. In Japan, we have praised to help people who have experienced sexual violence and slowly shifting attitudes towards sexual violence in Japanese community. However, we are facing a big challenge, how to overcome the shame and stigma of sexual violence. Arezou mentioned at the beginning, the video reflects or shows their culture. It is right. In my video, you can see me speaking in Japanese, but it is not only speaking Japanese. My tone of voice, how I speak, emphasize and soften. My body language reflects on my culture. So what I'm trying to say here is, I believe language is my culture, part of myself, connects me. I can find myself who I am, my own identity in my own language. If I lost my own language, I would feel I have lost a part of myself. Seeing the video is powerful to me. People easily pick up their cultural behavior and connect to the video. I believe the video is a powerful tool to prevent sexual violence, and people feel safer to connect and start talking about it. Better than just hearing Japanese language, I believe the video is more effective and powerful. Well, I will say now goodbye, Hairera, to you in the language that my heart connects with. Sayonara. Now, same as the beginning of my presentation, please use the chat to say goodbye in the language your heart connects with. ありがとうございました. Thank you. So now I will hand over to the Anjan.
यौन हानि कई वर्षों के लिए लोगों, उनके परिवारों और उनके समुदायों को नुकसान पहुंचा सकती है। न्यूजीलैंड में हमारे समुदाय के भविष्य के लिए हम यौन हानि को रोकना चाहते हैं। यह मायने रखता है चाहे आप शादीशुदा हैं या एक नया रिश्ता शुरू करने की सोच रहे हैं। आप यह सुनिश्चित कर सकते हैं कि जब आप सेक्स करते हैं तो आप किसी को चोट नहीं पहुंचा रहे हैं। आप उनसे पूछ सकते हैं कि क्या वे ठीक हैं और उनके जवाब को ध्यान से सुनें। उनकी बॉडी लैंग्वेज पर भी ध्यान दें। यदि आपको लगता है कि सामने वाला व्यक्ति सुनिश्चित नहीं है तो आप किसी भी समय रुक सकते हैं। कई बार लोग संस्कृति या धर्म को बहाना बनाकर आपका इस्तेमाल करना चाहेंगे, बट ऐसा कोई बहाना नहीं है। न्यूजीलैंड में किसी की भी मर्जी के बिना उसके साथ सेक्स करना गैर कानूनी है। इसी के साथ किसी भी शक्तिशाली ओहदे जैसे शिक्षक, धार्मिक गुरु या किसी को काम पे नियुक्त करके उसका शारीरिक शोषण करना भी गैर कानूनी है। यदि आप किसी ऐसे व्यक्ति को जानते हैं जिसके साथ यौन हानि हो रही है या किसी ऐसे व्यक्ति को जानते हैं जो हमारे समाज में यौन हानि पहुंचा रहा है तो कृपया हमसे संपर्क करें। हम यहाँ हमेशा आपके लिए उपलब्ध हैं। Namaste dosto. Good morning friends. We all know why sexual violence is not a desirable form of behavior and how it harms women. Let me just share my thoughts on why it is harmful for us men. Every time we take out our anger, frustration on any woman, not only are we causing harm to her and her relation, but also to us. Dealing with the toxic notion of masculinity has always been an issue amongst us men, particularly us Asian men. I'm from India, if you don't remember. Men do not cry. They do not make excuses. We have to hear this every time while we are growing up. Dealing with overachieving parents and siblings and the constant comparison with others to achieve and do better in life can be a big stress at times. But when we take out our anger and frustration on our partner, we are doing two things. A, we are losing the love and respect of the person who has committed herself to us and will stick with us through thick and thin throughout our lives. And B, our children will never grow up having a normal, healthy childhood. And their future also will be like, they'll grow up, but they'll never respect us. They'll never respect their parents. They'll never respect their partner. It's okay for us men to be caring. It's okay for us to cry when we need to. And it's okay for us men to ask for help if we need help. If we men are the problem, we cannot have a solution without involving men. So we all should try and end sexual violence. Violence actually breaks us men. It does not make us a proper man. Thank you. Over to Arezou. Actually, I think Samar will be the leader.
Yeah, thank
ಒತ್ತಾಯಪೂರ್ವಕವಾದ ಲೈಂಗಿಕತೆಯು ಅನೇಕ ವರ್ಷಗಳಿಂದ ನಡೆದುಕೊಂಡು ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಇದನ್ನು ತಡೆಯಲು ನ್ಯೂಜಿಲೆಂಡ್ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಮುಂದಾಗಿದೆ. ಇದು ಗಂಡ ಹೆಂಡತಿ ನಡುವೆ ಇರಬಹುದು ಅಥವಾ ಸಮಾಜದಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲಾದರೂ ಇರಬಹುದು. ನೀವು ಅದನ್ನು ತಡೆಗಟ್ಟಬಹುದು. ಇದರಿಂದ ಮಹಿಳೆಗೆ ಮಾನಸಿಕ ಒತ್ತಡ ಉಂಟಾಗಿ ಕುಟುಂಬದ ಮೇಲೆ ಘೋರ ಪರಿಣಾಮ ಬೀರುತ್ತದೆ. ಈ ಸಂಭೋಗದಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮ್ಮಿಂದ ಬೇರೆಯವರಿಗೆ ನೋವಾಗಿದೆಯಾ, ನೀವು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಸುಖಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಬೇರೆಯವರಿಗೆ ತೊಂದರೆ ಕೊಡುತ್ತಿದ್ದೀರಾ ಎಂಬುದನ್ನು ಅವರು ಯೋಚಿಸುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. ಆದರೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಅನುಮತಿ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಮೋಜು ಮಾಡುವುದು ತಪ್ಪು. ಇದು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಸಮ್ಮತಿ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ನಡೆಯುತ್ತಿದ್ದರೆಂದು ನಿಮಗೆ ಅನಿಸಿದರೆ ನೀವು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಹಕ್ಕನ್ನು ಕೇಳಬಹುದೆಂದು ನ್ಯೂಜಿಲೆಂಡ್ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಹೇಳುತ್ತದೆ. ಕೆಲವೊಮ್ಮೆ ಜನರು ತಮ್ಮ ಸಂಸ್ಕೃತಿ ಅಥವಾ ಧರ್ಮದ ಹೆಸರಿನಲ್ಲಿ ತಮ್ಮ ಅಧಿಕಾರವನ್ನು ದುರುಪಯೋಗಪಡಿಸಿಕೊಂಡು ಒತ್ತಾಯಪೂರ್ವಕ ಸಂಭವಿಸುತ್ತಾರೆ. ನಾವು ಇಷ್ಟಪಡದ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಯೊಂದಿಗೆ ಮಲಗುವ ಇಚ್ಛೆ ಇಲ್ಲದಿದ್ದರೆ ಅವರು ನಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಒತ್ತಾಯಿಸಿದರೆ ಅದು ಕಾನೂನು ಬಾಹಿರವಾಗಿದೆ. ಈ ರೀತಿಯಾದ ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿಯನ್ನು ನೀವು ಎದುರಿಸುತ್ತಿದ್ದರೆ ನೀವು ನಿಮ್ಮ ಧ್ವನಿಯನ್ನು ಎತ್ತಬಹುದು. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಸಮುದಾಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರಾದರೂ ಲೈಂಗಿಕ ಹಾನಿ ಮಾಡುತ್ತಿದ್ದರೆ ಎಂದು ನಿಮಗನಿಸಿದರೆ ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು ಸಹಾಯ ಕೇಳಲು ನಮಗೆ ಕರೆ ಮಾಡಿ. ನಾವು ನಿಮಗಾಗಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿದ್ದೇವೆ. Kia ora everyone. Namaskara ellaru. Adding to what my panelists have to say, it's the idea of approaching sexual violence with an open mind. For years, over the many centuries, as a human civilization, we've always been the kind of group who have stigmatized sexual violence, something that has to be between partners and nobody else. Understandably, the cultures we come from, the different types of understanding and different ways we engage in relationships, it is understood that sexual violence is something that is misunderstood in many different ethnic communities. Let's Talk is about finding comfort in one's own language, understanding that sexual violence is something that has no stigma around it, but is something we should speak up on. And it is nothing short of what it is, a crime. Indian marriage and relationships, from the perspective where I come from, has often been understood as a partnership between two individuals, sometimes even individuals who have never met before. Arranged marriages is a common thing in India. However, what happens after is something you can take into your own hands. If at any point in time you believe that there is a form of sexual violence and any form of stigma around it where you're trying to curtail yourself away from the community realizing it here, I understand many people have different communities out here, a group of people you've been a part of, and having a feeling that them talking about it could be something that is taboo and something that shouldn't be out there in the community but between the partners is something we would like to stop. Anybody experiencing sexual violence or anybody witnessing sexual violence is requested to please stand up. Please speak and tell your sorrows, tell your problems, and we are here to help you through them. India, in its own sense, have come a long way with where we are understanding different relationships, understanding different sexual spectrums, even recognizing the third gender. But understandably, there's quite a bit of difference between what is there in India and what is here in New Zealand. As partners, any individual facing any kind of sexual violence should be allowed to speak and ask for help in a manner which is not consequential. Understandably, many partners may believe that the very approach of talking to people about it could invite some sort of irrational response from the police and stuff like that. This Let's Talk and Safe to Talk campaigns we are trying to run is for us to understand that This does not have to elevate to that extent. We are here to explain, understand what you are going through, and understand and explain what are your options, how you're supposed to go on about it, and not be reactive about it. In the case you believe that there is something that can be prevented, we help you prevent it. And if there's something that needs to be cured, we are also there for that. Let us stop the stigma around sexual violence. Understand for what it is, a crime. Let's Talk and Safe to Talk is only meant to enable and empower us through language. And with that, I will conclude with a small greeting from my language. Namaskaravu. Dhanyawada. I hand it back to Arizona.
Thank you. Thank you. They were just so powerful. And I was just listening, and I was just thinking how they just sit in the heart, because they're just coming from the heart. So thank you so much to the three of you. I think that would be the time that we would welcome any questions and any comments and feedback from the audience. Miriam, would you like to?
Ora koutou katoa. I think you just summarized something that was emerging in my heart of this whole presentation so far, that it was coming from the heart, so it sits in the heart. And that was definitely, as I was listening and connecting with each of your stories, that was what was emerging. I was also noticing how beautifully simple sometimes the prevention messages and conversations were, but how powerful they were coming from each of your first languages, and how they were, even though I couldn't understand them, they were still resonating with me as well, in terms of that community process. So hopefully, as the audience pops up different questions, I thought I'll start with a question that I have. So these videos were released not that long ago. Is that correct? Was it the 21st of July?
Yes, recently. They have been released recently, and they are available on Shama's website and also the YouTube channel.
Fantastic. I'm just curious around what's the initial response been from the community. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, I think that is the process that we are trying to figure out how it's going. And Bex will be the best person to know, because they just released, and we thought we'll start with a webinar in order to get the message across for people to go and engage with them. So we'll be ready probably after a month or so to see how the responses are going. But so far we have received very supporting messages in terms of how the simplicity of these videos have actually contributed a lot in terms of what people think. I mean, the target for the project was actually simple. Let's start conversations, let's talk. So we were not ambitious in terms of what are they going to do. And as I said at the beginning, for all of us, that was just the beginning of lockdown. And then we had very little things to work with in terms of making these videos. So we are looking at the possibilities in the future. If there is community development fund or other ways of making this project larger and making this project and kind of changing the form of the project and other possibilities. We would welcome other possibilities.
I think how you mentioned it at the beginning is quite inspirational. One phone, one message, one language, one person. That's quite inspirational for others to think actually how things can move and be developed. And I think, as you all said, they were very well crafted messages, but that and being able to cross that over in different languages. I suppose, and from what I've seen in the chat, there's a few people that have other languages apart from English, from what was coming through in the chat, and really kind of helping people that might only have one language. What is the importance of having something in your own language? You've talked a little bit about it, but in particular, how can we consolidate that in our prevention work? Why is it so important? Who would like to answer?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll let
No, you go ahead. I was going to say, please start. Yeah, I've been just talking more than I was supposed to talk.
It is important for us to speak up in our own languages. I understand many of the attendees today are here to understand how this is supposed to work. We are here to help, and we are also here to ask for help. We request each one of you to do something similar. If you could contact us, and we'd actually come back to you with what you could help us with. If you were to record this short message, the same things what we have done, we could understand that many, many different pockets of people can understand this in their own language. Some don't understand what I spoke, but some may understand the language you speak. That is the idea of this entire seminar.
Yeah, that's great. Just adding to what Sam just said, is that though these videos are from different languages, but we decided also to add the subtitle, the caption to the messages. So it's like the unity, again, that whole notion of unity and difference coming together, that we are actually all believe in the same thing, even if we are speaking it in a different language. So we are all having the same aim and the same goal, and we are trying to support. I'm just looking at the chat area as well, that then they're going back to Miriam's question about the level of response that these videos have been received. Like, for instance, we have Samar's videos have been viewed more than 160 times, and that is fabulous. So is really about just creating that little space to talk, really those little spaces to talk, and we would love to see what people think and what the responses are in order to move forward. Yes, any other, our Arjun or Cora, would you like to respond to Miriam's question, adding notion, comments, points?
Yes. Oh, you go.
No, please, you go.
No, Arjun, you go.
So I completely agree with Samat as to how he explained the relation between the vision and mission of this project and Shama, to how language is a facilitator in in connecting to more people. Just to add to that thought, language is the easiest way we people can connect to each other. We can understand our thoughts, and we all are social beings, especially when any other person from any other language comes to New Zealand, which is predominantly English speaking nation. uh, he or she will only connect, mostly in the beginning, will only connect with people who speak the same language, because this person is thinking and feeling in his or her language, and the other person who thinks and speaks the same language is going to be a friend to him or her. So that is why language is very important for new people who are coming here. And some people take years and years to develop those kind of English skills, which are enough for him or her to adjust in the society here in New Zealand. So for so long, that person is really dependent on the language that person speaks. Kauru, over to
Yes,
you. You wanted to
yes.
add?
Already that all of them that talked about that, about language, why important, and then in my presentation also I mentioned that language is culture, and then it's the video is if I'm saying if when I saw the Japanese video, and I have amongst of other ethnic friends, so maybe I'm going to talk to them as well that, oh, there is other Spanish video is there, so why don't you have a look or something like that. So that will be the extent to that for diverse to that in all language, not just only for the Japanese people, but that we could also that for to let people to know to my friends or other people. So that video might be the really powerful and then effective to prevent the sexual abuse violence.
And just as I was thinking about the use of captioning and the use of first language, I think it's a really powerful tool also to support the children of migrant parents that might actually not always have these are the topics that aren't often talked about commonly in any family actually. So I know from working alongside migrant refugee kids that actually being able to talk about it in first language with their parents, which is the most common and comfortable language at home, and not actually having the words to explain things. So it's a really powerful cross-generational tool that you're creating, and how can you also support that conversations in first language within family systems where actually the kids might be somewhere actually more comfortable with English sometimes because that's what they're talking every day at school. So it's really interesting for that, from that point of view as well, of the power that these resources could have in that. And I was thinking also about a good, one of my work colleagues who used to often say, when things are only in English, it doesn't talk to me and I can dismiss it. And so, it's that white thing over there and I don't have to do it. And I think that's a really, I think that was the power, and particularly having also men involved in this project, was really important, so that it's, it is about all of us, and that, cohesion and diversity, and what you were talking about before around, we're all in this together, actually really is a really powerful message.
I actually got very excited when Neve told me that, a few men have been volunteered to do the video. And I said, oh, wow, that's fabulous. We did not plan that and we did not expect that. So thanks to them for getting involved. And yeah, I'm looking at the messages as well. And here we have Beck's message about Shama has gotten a small amount of funding to do some specific prevention activities with a couple of communities, and these videos are just our first step to start the conversations and give some and provide this type of service and support.
So I'm just wondering if the audience has any other questions that they would like to put forward in terms of this project, or what you would like to see Shama develop more. What would be useful for you, I suppose, could also be useful for you to hear from them. Would that be interesting? Do you think, so there's a question that's just popped through, and I'll just take a second to read it. Do you think that the prevalence of sexual harms correlates with the attitudes and relationships between women and men in general? If so, what are the implications? If so, are there any implications of that? And I suppose that's a tricky one, because we've talked about lots of diversity of culture, and that actually culture is not the excuse, but of course there's some specific cultural dimensions and specific things that happen in different cultural groups that might relate to gender dynamics. So I don't know how you would like to answer some of those that question.
If I may, I could answer that with my personal experience. Attitudes, yes, like Beck's already put it. It can be any gender. It can be between any partner. And them experiencing this correlation with sexual harm and what is the relationship they have, there is a gray line with different ethnic communities and understanding what constitutes sexual harm. For example, in India, the general idea and understanding is that people get married to have sex, to project, to procreate, and have a family of their own. But out here in New Zealand, we should be very understanding of this situation. And Shama has been very nice enough to understand this particular area in Indian ethnic communities, and understood that there is this gray line of what is understood as marriage, but also safeguarding the human rights of the person. If they are not comfortable with any kind of sexual advances, they are encouraged to speak up and at least have someone who is there listening to them. Having that message heard by someone else gives that sense of reliance that there is definitely someone who could respond in the case this could get worse. Understandably, relationships is a very tricky thing, and maintaining it is a it's a balancing act, to be honest. But Shama would like to definitely confer and convince people that they're there only to support them, there will not be any kind of action taken unless each one of the people who are contacting Shama are comfortable with it. Like, any action taken from our end will not be reactive, but will only be consulting. So please feel free to speak up and encourage other people to speak up.
Yeah, one of the that is fabulous response. One of the things that we wanted to achieve from the Connection Hui and then Let's Talk project and Shama's work around the sexual violence at the national level was that to really creating a central distributed leadership and central leadership around this. So across New Zealand, whoever that think that Shama would be some sort of help and support to their own community or their own services, please get in touch with Shama. And that is what we're trying to achieve through this webinar as well. And if you are interested in getting involved with making these videos, please get in touch again with us. And we are trying to have more languages. That also indirectly shows the variety of ethnic ethnic groups and cultures that live in New Zealand together, and that all of us, we are holding the same message in that manner. I'm just looking at also the notes. Miriam, are there any questions that you would like us to engage with?
No, the group has been a bit quiet today. The only question that pops up is actually more of a thank you and congratulations on your great work that's come through. Wonderful. So, and I do have to echo that as well. So just I'm suppose if there's no other questions from the group, I'm really interested if there's any final words from you that you would like to say to wrap this up today, and then we'll close it, because I think I'm wondering if also people are just letting it all sink, and you know, it was a very heartfelt presentation, and sometimes those processes take a while for things to emerge, and that's potentially what the silence is about. It's not so much a reflection of not engaging with you. So are there any final comments from today that you'd like to make?
Now, I would just wanted to thank everybody, and I tried to bring everyone in the beginning when I showed the kind of name different people. I just want to say those who have not been named and have been named and they have contributed to this, thank you so much. And thank you so much to the people who are on this webinar and listening and engaging with what we are saying. And if anything around what we said and we talked about and this project resonates with you in some way, and you have ideas and you want to take it further, please get in touch, and we would welcome anything that would help prevention of sexual violence in New Zealand among ethnic communities, as the mission for Shama and other ethnic groups across New Zealand. And hopefully in several years, we can come back and say that we now feel more comfortable talking about these matters, and we have more systems which are culturally appropriate in place in order to deal with and create space for people to engage with it. And thanks to you as well, Miriam, for putting all this together. We could have not been able to share any of this if you were not there.
Anyone else, any final comments?
I am humbled with this response from what I'm seeing here, and honestly humbled with to understand Shama for including me to be a part of this. Thank you all for this patient here.
Just to add a small thing, actually, to answer that question, that how culture is, how our attitude towards our relationship is defined by the culture. I completely agree with that, and that is why the change has to be started from the very beginning. We need to tell our children that objectification of women is not correct. We should stop using swear words that involve mother and sister, and also to some extent cracking sexist jokes. These are very small things that we do it just as part of our normal lives, through like even when we are small kids, but we don't realize that the implication it might have in like how that defines our outlook towards our partner or women in general. So yeah, and it was great to be part of this project, and Shama, and thank you so much for making me involved in this project. Thank you so much.
Yes, I'm the same for that other people. I'm very pleased to be here. And then for this video, hopefully go to the nationwide and then also in the world because on the YouTube and then get some people who are vulnerable people can access to the shamas. That would be great. Thank you. ありがとうございました。
Arigato. Thank you to all of you for being here today. I think it's a really important project that you've started, and I'm really excited to see where it's going to go and how it's going to evolve, and the engagement and the conversations that will start in each of the communities where the languages that are currently available, and what that might trigger. And I think for me, it's the reminder in any journey that actually the diverse paths that we all go towards a similar vision, which was said before, that we'll have different pathways, we'll have different values and beliefs, we'll have different conversations, but ultimately we're all trying to end sexual violence. And that's the exciting part of having that diversity and listening to each other and listening to the strengths within diversity, which I think our cultures and our societies often try and be divisive more than bring that solidarity together. And for me, I hope that what people are taking away is really advocating for culturally responsive initiatives are essential for this journey. We can't do it without people like yourselves and taking leadership and actually showing the way in this journey. So very excited about this project, and I'm glad to be able to host you, and hopefully you'll come back and tell us more on how this project's evolving, maybe in a year's time, and we'll see what's been happening. So we'll end here, and hopefully everyone's taking a lot out of it. We'll make sure that in the email that we send out with the recording, you also have links to all the videos, and utilize them as much as possible. They could be a great resource, both if you're working in schools which have high levels of diversity, which are most schools now in New Zealand, but also in one-on-one client situations where you might have someone who's not English as first language, but also really strongly advocating to utilise Shama as a service, who really is working strongly to create that space within the sexual violence sector to be responsive to people from diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds. So thank you. Does anyone want to close with us karakia in a first language? I often close with a Māori karakia, but we could mix it up, and if anyone would like to, I could do that, or one of you could do it.
Why don't you do it yourself in the language that has brought us all together, which is the Maori and English language?
Nice. Cool. So, wishing you all well off on this journey today on a Friday, wishing you well for the weekend. And unihia, unihia, unihia ki te uru tapunui, kia wātia kia mama te nākau te tinana, te wairua I te ara takata, ko ia e rongo whakairia ki runga, kia tina, hui tai ki e.
Excellent. Thank you. Bye. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.